New details of the negotiation process have been revealed. Is Zelensky really ready to withdraw troops from Donbas? In the Dnipropetrovsk region, the Ukrainian armed forces liberated 5 villages, while in Kostyantynivka, Russians are hunting civilians with FPV drones. In Donetsk, the occupiers forced Ukrainian prisoners to play football in a so-called death match. A powerful attack on the Lukoil oil refinery in Volgograd. Russian commanders are eliminating their own, according to a Wagner fighter's confession. Major dismissals are looming in the Russian army. Putin has realized that his generals are lying to him and fabricating victories. Lukashenko received weight loss medication from the United States in exchange for releasing political prisoners. Hello, my name is Anastasia Dimitrovskaya. I'll tell you the main thing right now, but first, like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't get lost in the vastness of YouTube anymore. Russia is trying to stop the railway and disrupt the logistics chain from Poland to Ukraine. Radio technology specialist Flash reported that 2 days ago, Shaheds attacked a train and then a repair crew. The day before yesterday, it was a railway bridge, and last night, a locomotive depot. According to Flash, all the attacks are targeting the railway line. Kyiv, Kovel. Meanwhile, in the area of Kostyantynivka, the Russians are conducting so-called safaris on local residents and heads of the military-civil administration. Serhiy Gorbunov reported that the occupiers are hunting civilians using strike FPV drones in residential neighborhoods of the city. As of today, at least 1 casualty is confirmed. 2 more people were injured. They were urgently taken to a hospital in Druzhkivka. Gorbunov reported that this was yet another Russian attack on volunteers. And the 225th Separate Assault Battalion shared how, in the fall, their fighters liberated 5 villages in the Dnipropetrovsk region.
They are raising the flag over Novosibirsk.
We're talking about Borisivka, Novoselivka, Sosnivka, Khoroshe, and Vorone. The 3rd Assault Battalion of the 225th Separate Assault Battalion reported that this is a unique case where a unit continuously held its positions and advanced for more than 100 days. They also noted that all the soldiers who took part in this operation have been nominated for state awards. The situation is worse than critical. Z military correspondents reported that the Ukrainian armed forces have almost driven the Russian army out of Kupyansk. But that's far from all the bad news for the enemy. More details about what's happening on the front line are coming up in our military review.
Drone attack on Moscow. The Ministry of Emergency Situations reported the alleged downing of 8 drones over the Russian capital. For the 2nd time this month, drones attacked the Russian seaport in Temryuk, Krasnodar Krai at night. The local operations headquarters stated that as a result of the strike, 2
At a large industrial facility, several massive storage tanks, specifically designed for holding highly flammable petroleum products such as gasoline, diesel, and crude oil, tragically caught fire. The blaze erupted with considerable intensity, engulfing these critical containers and sending plumes of thick, dark smoke into the sky. The significant incident occurred within the confines of the sprawling industrial complex, causing immediate concern for safety and environmental impact. At the moment, the fire covers an area of about 2,000 square kilometers.
A gas flare occurred at the Orenburg gas processing plant. The world's largest gas chemical complex has suspended its operations. It wasn't just a fireworks display of emotions that it took on the Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery in the Rostov region.
This is a key facility for supplying the Russian occupation army with fuel and lubricants. The neutralization of this key oil refinery is a major blow to the logistics of the occupying army.
The existing logistics aren't showing any success either. To carry out assault operations, the enemy uses the tactics of small infantry groups, UAVs, and guided aerial munitions. The results of such tactics: in the Volchansk district, the occupiers lost a company killed and 9 taken prisoner. The situation is worse than critical. This is how Z military correspondents describe the situation on the so-called Putin-captured Kupyansk direction. Propagandists reported that the Ukrainian armed forces have almost driven the Russian army out of Kupyansk and regained control over the city.
Kupyansk primarily held political significance for the Russian dictator and accordingly for the Russian army. The point is that it was precisely the information about the alleged capture of Kupyansk that the Russian dictator tried to use to exert military political pressure, both on Ukraine and first and foremost on the United States at the moment when the negotiation process was intensifying. These are colossal image losses for the Russian Federation, and at the level of statements made by the top official.
These shots show the halting of the occupiers' assault in the Dnipropetrovsk direction. The results: minus 11 units of Russian equipment, 4 tanks, 2 armored personnel carriers, and other hardware, plus a bunch of enemy infantry, according to Ukraine's defenders.
It is worth noting changes in the tactics and strategy of the Russian occupiers' actions. If previously their tactics involved small assault groups, now the occupiers have once again switched to so-called bonsai attacks, with the use of large numbers of armored vehicles. This is especially characteristic during the fighting near Ryshan and their attempts to break through toward Dobropilya in the Dobropilya direction. In other words, the occupiers are well aware of the time crunch and that they have been given specifically political objectives to try to take control of both Kubinsk and Mirnograd, with the aim of increasing the Russian Federation's leverage in the negotiation process.
The anti-tank ditch became a mass grave for the occupiers thanks to Ukrainian drone operators. These images serve as a reminder: those who came to seize Ukrainian land will remain in it forever, no matter what objectives they are given. I never cease to admire the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They hold the front and stand against a massive horde that vastly outnumbers them. That's why I urge you to support the armed forces of Ukraine, and if you can't do so financially, write them words of encouragement in the comments. Donbas at any cost. Yesterday, during a meeting with Russian business leaders, Putin stated that Russia will not back down from its demand to bring Ukraine under Russian control. The entire Donbas.
Vladimir Putin claimed that the Russian side is still ready to make the concessions he agreed to for himself back then in Anchorage. In other words, the point is that Donbas is ours. It was stated that the issue of the Kramatorsk-Kostyantynivka Slavyansk hub is not up for discussion. On
this point, Ukraine will not agree, which means the negotiations have reached a deadlock. At the same time, the New York Times reports that Russia will reject the peace plan, but will continue to play at negotiations.
Russia is interested in negotiations on a possible peace agreement in order to maintain working relations with Washington and avoid taking full blame for the ongoing conflict, experts say. Moscow is also interested in delaying any additional sanctions or other economic restrictions from Washington. The tug-of-war over potential peace terms is also deepening the rift between Ukraine and its Western allies, as the details are being discussed in various capitals through complex negotiations. And
it seems that the US does not want to play this game of cheese at all. The announced negotiations of the American delegation in the Kremlin are not planned. At the same time, Peskov says that Putin is still reviewing the materials from the latest meeting presented by Russia and the US.
As planned, we are analyzing what Putin received from Dmitriev. We are analyzing this material, and then, depending on the decisions made by the head of state, we will continue our communication with the Americans.
He is studying the materials and apparently drawing up a plan for world domination, because judging by the mood in the Kremlin, the Russian Federation is ready to act big, to the point of changing the globe. And here, it's not just about Ukraine anymore, as hinted by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
Andre, 8 years old Moscow, dreams of having a globe. Maybe we should wait just a little so that the final borders are already on the globe. We will definitely make it happen.
Meanwhile, negotiations are being prepared between the US and Ukraine. After the talks between Zelensky, Vitkov and Kushner, the president of Ukraine announced that a meeting at the highest level is being prepared.
Today we spoke for almost an hour with representatives of the President of the United States of America. We spoke with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, and it was truly a good conversation. A lot of details. There are good ideas, and we discuss them. We also have some new ideas of our own on how to bring the real world closer. This concerns formats, meetings, and of course timing. Today, Rustam Umarov will also be speaking with the American team. It's important if we manage to organize what we discussed today.
At the same time, Kyiv Post reports that a meeting between Zelensky and Trump could take place at any point during the year. December 28th.
The president of Ukraine is preparing for an urgent visit to Florida. The purpose of the trip: direct negotiations with Donald Trump's team at Mar-a-Lago.
However, some Western media are reporting on a possible compromise. This would be the withdrawal of the Ukrainian armed forces from Donbas. Possibly after a referendum is held, a so-called demilitarized zone will be established there.
During a conversation with journalists, Zelensky stated that one of the proposed solutions to the territorial dispute is the creation of a free economic zone in the demilitarized regions of eastern Ukraine, but only on the condition that the Russian Federation also withdraws its troops from certain Ukrainian territories. However, unlike Kyiv, the Kremlin has not yet expressed readiness to take this step.
What do you think they will agree on? Share your thoughts in the comments. Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many of you are watching us from Kazakhstan, Moldova, Europe, and even the States. We Ukrainians are very grateful for your support and proud to have such reasonable viewers. Let us know under this episode as well, where are you watching us from, and does your country support our fight against the empire? Evil. I always enjoy reading your comments. We'll continue for now. Now comes the most interesting part. In temporarily occupied Donetsk, Russians forced Ukrainian prisoners of war to play football with them.
Where are you from?
I'm from Kharkov.
With Kharkov? Oh, good city. From Odessa. Odessa. With
Gorodenko.
from Gorodenko.
I've been to those parts.
Russian soldiers organized staged matches and forced Ukrainian soldiers in yellow and blue uniforms with AFU written on them to play against fighters from the Russian Pyatnashka brigade. They called this match a life match. A match for life, to make it. They decided to call it the Match of Life as a counter to the Match of Death that took place in Kyiv in 1942, when the Nazis allegedly shot the victorious team of Soviet prisoners of war. It's also important to note that in 1942, the Germans didn't shoot anyone, and the story of the Match of Death is nothing more than a Soviet propaganda legend. On the night of December 26th, drones attacked Volgograd, Russia. As a result of the drone attack, a fire broke out near the Lukoil Volgograd oil refinery. What's also interesting here is that despite regular drone attacks, falling revenues, cheap oil and sanctions, Russian company Lukoil threw one of the most expensive corporate parties of the year. And more than 60 million rubles were spent on a party for the company's top managers in Moscow. A significant portion of the funds went to invited celebrities, among whom were Kirkorov, Leontiev and Kadisheva. As the saying goes, there's no money, but hang in there, gentlemen. President Zelensky's Christmas address caused quite a stir in the swamps.
Today we all share the same dream. And we all make the same wish, that he would croak, each of us says to ourselves.
Russian media, including the pseudo-liberal ones, translated the words about him supposedly croaking as so that he would die. I won't even talk about the translation mistake, because the real issue here is the understanding of those who claim to be native speakers of the great Russian language and their grasp of the full depth of the Ukrainian language. Because, as the explanatory dictionary of the Ukrainian language says, skanet doesn't just mean to die, but to die in torment and agony. But for Putin, just dying would be too easy. As for what this all means, honestly, I don't know. Whether the Kremlin fully grasped the meaning or not, they are deeply dissatisfied with Zelensky's words. Because, according to Dmitry Peskov, it was uncultured and malicious.
Uncultured, spiteful, he comes across as a rather inadequate person. And
how do you feel about such wishes directed at Putin?
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
In Russia, bloggers will be forced to spread propaganda. This was reported by Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation, citing a new Russian draft law according to which major online platforms will be required to allocate at least 5% of their total advertising space to content about patriotism, traditional values, and Russian culture. Moreover, these same requirements will also apply to the owners of popular public channels and pages on social networks. In the 25th Army of the Russian Federation, the regimental commander with the call sign Uzor is eliminating his own soldiers. This was reported by former Wagner member and convict Mikhail Pavliuk.
Brother, if you can, please help. I can. Honestly, our regimental commander is wiping people out, guys. 25th Army, 37th Regiment, his call sign is Uzor. He's wiping people out. I'll give all the testimony, whatever is needed. I'm just really fed up myself. I don't even know what to do anymore. It's hard for me.
Well, he'll wipe you out too. Come on, tell us, you never know what could happen. So,
Bro, that's what I'm telling you. There's extortion going on, just so you understand. My salary is 275. I give away 150, just like that. We have a company here. The company is made up of convicts. The company gives 150,000. I just give it for the common fund. The regimental commander is wiping people out. Seriously, the guys come to him right after an assault. And he just takes them out.
Pavliuk himself has been sent on assaults for almost 3 years now, even though the contract
It's been 2 years and 8 months now.
Vladimir Putin believes in the possibility of a complete victory in Ukraine. Russian generals and intelligence agencies, as usual, systematically embellish reports about the situation at the front. Western media write that Putin regularly meets with trusted associates who report that the war is increasingly hurting the economy. But he continues to believe in Russia's victory. At military briefings for Putin, Ukrainian losses are exaggerated, Moscow's resource advantages are emphasized, and tactical failures are downplayed. Watch our next segment to see how Putin's generals paint victories for their leader while hiding obvious failures.
Russian generals and intelligence agencies embellish reports about the situation at the front for the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin.
The West military group has taken the strategically important city of Kupyansk, which the enemy is unsuccessfully trying to reclaim.
Putin believes that Russia has almost defeated Ukraine, which is why he refuses a ceasefire. This is reported by the Financial Times. Western officials told the publication that, under the influence of fake information reaching the Kremlin, Putin refuses to accept favorable terms for ending the war offered by American President Donald Trump.
Russian military and intelligence agencies regularly provide Putin with reports about the war. These reports exaggerate Ukraine's losses, highlight the advantages of the Russian Federation in terms of resources, and downplay tactical failures.
According to the publication's sources, this optimistic picture presented to the Kremlin dictator during military briefings makes him believe he can win the war.
Our troops are grinding down the enemy, their formations and reserves.
Putin's blind faith. It doesn't change, even though he regularly meets with trusted confidants who explain to him how the war is becoming an increasing burden on Moscow's faltering economy.
Russian generals tell Putin what he wants to hear. He wants victories from them, demands victories, and they present those victories to him.
The key figure responsible for informing Putin about the situation at the front is the chief of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, Valery Gerasimov. Encouraged by information that Ukraine would not offer resistance, he led the offensive on Kyiv in February 2022, which ended in failure and a humiliating retreat. In August 2024, Gerasimov reported to Putin that Russia had stopped the advance of Ukrainian defense forces in the Kursk region, although part of the territory was already under the control of Ukrainian troops. On November 20th, Valery Gerasimov announced that Russian forces had taken Kupyansk.
The units of the West Group liberated the city of Kupyansk, and they continue to destroy the formations of the Ukrainian armed forces that are surrounded on the left bank of the Oskil River.
For the generals, the continuation of the war is a blessing, since they gain status, funding, and resources. They are the most significant people in the state. Why not fabricate victories, especially if the leadership demands them? Later, if necessary, we can fix things somehow.
Following Gerasimov, Putin himself continued to talk about Kupyansk and its capture. According to the Russian dictator, Ukrainian forces near Pokrovsk and Kupyansk are blocked.
Kupyansk and the city of Krasnoarmysk. The enemy ended up blocked and surrounded? By the way, I discussed this issue with the commanders of the respective groups. They don't mind. Andrei Vladimirovich, you don't mind allowing the esteemed media representatives into the dangerous enemy's encirclement zone. Do you agree to that?
Amidst active fighting on December 12th, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Kupyansk, Kharkiv region. On social media, he posted a selfie video near the bullet-riddled city entrance sign, demonstrating that the Russian side's claims of allegedly full control over Kupyansk do not correspond to reality, and that Kupyansk is controlled by Ukraine.
Today, the Kupyansk direction. Our soldiers here are achieving results for Ukraine. The Russians have talked a lot about Kupyansk. We see this. I was there. I congratulated the guys.
And here is what Putin's pathetic attempts to explain Zelensky's video near the stele at the entrance to Kupyansk look like, the capture of which the dictator had previously claimed. During the live broadcast, Putin repeated that the city is under Russian control. And he called Zelensky's video a fake.
A talented performer without any irony. We know this from his movies, even back in the old days. So there's nothing unusual about this. They say the stele looks different now, but that's not the point. The stele is about 1 kilometer away from the city itself. So why just stand on the doorstep? Go inside the house. Exactly. If Kupyansk is really under their control,
military experts confirm that Putin is systematically being lied to about the situation at the front, and in particular about Kupyansk.
the Russians have already claimed 3 times that they have surrounded and captured Kupyansk, or, as they put it, that they have liberated it. For this, General Kuzovlev himself, who is the commander of the Western forces, was even awarded the title Hero of the Russian Federation on December 9th.
Meanwhile, Zivian correspondents have started backtracking and are openly stating that the Russian military is exhausted. So taking large cities is out of the question.
Believe me, our troops are extremely worn out, tired, and exhausted. Everyone who has been there knows this perfectly well.
Meanwhile, Z channels are reporting that Ukraine has effectively regained control over the city. Russian troops no longer control Kupyansk.
Judging by this map, the armed forces of the Russian Federation have already lost almost the entire territory of Kupyansk. But everyone got their medals. Apparently, in the future, we should expect a third liberation of Kupyansk. The situation has developed so that too many reports were filed, and now all the regiments are being forced to match those reports. 122 and 106 are talking about Hina. And from the headquarters, the reconnaissance is also not Pisa, about Kupyansk.
According to the Rybar channel, which is affiliated with the Ministry of Defense, the situation in the city for Russian troops has become worse than critical, according to their information. The Russians write that a significant part of the bridgehead on the western bank of the Oskil River, including the villages of Kondrashovka, Rodkovka and Moskovka, as well as the area near the dairy canning plant, have been lost. Also, according to Rybar, in December, one of the units lost almost 1,500 soldiers on the approaches to one of the villages. Back in November, According to the published map of hostilities, most of Kupyansk is now under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces, and clashes are continuing only on its northeastern outskirts.
Thanks to the efforts of various units and law enforcement agencies of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, control over Kupyansk has been regained. Now we can observe the development of a rather difficult situation for the Russian occupation forces.
Probably Putin could find some alternative ways to get information if he really wanted to. But obviously he is satisfied with everything as it is. In other words, he wants to be lied to. And if these lies satisfy him, again, the generals are, in a way, Putin's allies in his internal bureaucratic struggle against all those boring and dreary economists who constantly tell him that maybe it's time to stop, maybe it's worth considering a ceasefire.
Well, as long as the Russian generals keep painting fake victories for Putin, he continues to believe in this illusion. But on the front lines, the reality is completely different. And that's exactly what we're seeing now in Kupyansk.
Expelled from college for refusing to study the Russian language. And no, unfortunately, this is not a joke. A Ukrainian refugee in Britain was studying economics, politics, and statistics. Because of difficulties with certain subjects, the teachers repeatedly suggested that she study Russian. And when the young woman repeatedly refused these offers, she was essentially forced to leave her studies.
Katerina, whose father serves in the armed forces of Ukraine, called such suggestions offensive, tactless, similar to discrimination and racism, and a traumatic experience. In an interview with The Guardian, Katerina said that she was born in Donetsk, where the war began, so studying Russian goes against her personal principles.
Now she studies at home using her classmates' notes. In 2026, she plans to take her exams as a private candidate. By the way, being pressured to study Russian in British educational institutions is not an isolated case. In the fall, a scandal broke out over cases where Ukrainians were pressured to study Russian because they spoke it partially. These are the consequences of consuming the Russian language. Not only are they considered outsiders and unable to study, but everyone here is expected to speak Russian, and refugees are even forced to learn Russian. And what do you think about this? Very Trump-like. Along with the easing of sanctions, Lukashenko received weight loss medication from the States. Our journalists will share the details of this story, which is almost like a detective novel in some ways.
During visits to Belarus, the American delegation offered Lukashenko a weight loss drug in exchange for loyalty.
Don't eat too much or you'll end up like me. Eat less.
Rumor has it that the inner circle of the Belarusian dictator has been hinting to him for months that it's time to take care of his health and lose some weight.
Well, since I didn't have the opportunity to get treatment, one time I had to go to Moscow, then to Leningrad, then somewhere else.
Trump's envoy, John Cole, also discussed the topic of weight loss with Lukashenko and promised him a new American drug, which is banned from being imported into Belarus if he releases political prisoners.
I don't mind. Let's discuss this topic. Yes, on a global scale. God be with you. Let's try to work out a global deal like Mr. Trump likes, a big deal.
Trump's special envoy actively courted Lukashenko and even personally delivered gifts to him from the President of the United States.
And sir, I must say it's truly remarkable.
Mr. President, please pay attention to the signature. He very rarely, the President of the United States, signs his name like this, with his first name. It's a special sign of friendship. I was already leaving the Oval Office when he stopped me and asked, "Wait, hold on, don't forget, give this to the President." Yes, interesting cufflinks with an image of the White House. But I'll try not to be in his debt.
Rumor has it that during the meeting, Lukashenko generously treated his guest and made so many toasts that the American special envoy had to wait until he turned away to secretly pour out his shots.
Today it's allowed. Today it's allowed. And even though I don't like drunks, you can have 50 grams.
Lukashenko advised Washington on how to communicate with the Russian dictator Putin and the Venezuelan leader Maduro, and even expressed his willingness to offer him asylum in Belarus in case he fled.
We have common issues where we can help each other. You started talking about Venezuela. Can we work together there? We can. Yesterday I told John Cole that it would be free. You don't have to pay me anything. We'll work together for free.
In return, Lukashenko wanted the US to ease sanctions against certain Belarusian companies, in particular Belaruskali, and also to help with repairs to the presidential plane.
I want to state here officially that we have lifted the sanctions from Belarus. This is official. I had a meeting with President Trump, which was attended by several dozen other people. This was a decision made by the president who said, do it immediately.
The Trump administration hopes this will serve as an example for Putin, showing how to meet the US halfway and get bonuses in return. And
people say that Trump likes to meddle, but I'm not doing this just to meddle. I want to say that lately I've really liked his actions. I passed on some proposals of our pragmatism to John Cole. They are in line with the interests of the United States of America. We need to negotiate.
in less than a year of his presidency, Trump managed to reach an agreement with Lukashenko on the release of more than 250 political prisoners, including leaders of the Belarusian opposition, Sergei Tikhanovsky, Ales Bialyatsky, Viktor Babariko, and Maria Kolesnikova.
That's one less of Putin's militants. A government official from Dagestan has gone to Kobzon's concert. A certain Magomed Nabigadzhiev, deputy head of the Shamilskiy district of Dagestan, was sent to the 200s as a result of a drone strike in the so-called Belgorod People's Republic. He and two other representatives of the so-called self-defense arrived in the Belgorod region to deliver supplies for the Russian armed forces. But of course, Russian propaganda outlets claim it was a humanitarian convoy.
The deputy head of the Shamilskiy district of Dagestan went to the front to deliver aid to Russian soldiers and underwent an expedited denazification procedure. What's especially amusing is the post by Dagestan's head, Melikov. He calls cargo for the military of the occupying army, which is waging aggression against a neighboring country, humanitarian. He writes that the Ukro-Nazis have nothing sacred. Oh, those Nazis. Once again, they dared to defend themselves and kill the occupiers who came to destroy and loot their...
These vibrant urban centers, bustling with life and culture, represent the heart of human civilization, offering a diverse array of opportunities, experiences, and architectural marvels that define our modern world.